All right, I think we should be going. It is 2 o'clock Eastern, and this is the PM stream, the afternoon stream for my 3D art. If you've joined before, you kind of have an idea of what I work on during these streams. If you haven't, I always kind of start with a quick overview. I am a 3D artist. Now I think I can safely call myself that. I specialize in recreating real world locations in 3D tools. And from that process, I create a bunch of different types of art, including 3D landscape photos or renders, some sort of, we call them meme cards in Web3, but, interesting either animations or still renders using the actual same location as the original landscape photo. And I'm actually working towards bringing all of these worlds into fully interactive 3D environments. So think like a video game, think like virtual reality. There's a bunch of tools that I've been using and experimenting with, and I live stream my entire process. So typically in the morning, I work on my actual art that I'm usually going to mint and sell. So I've been working on a derivative of this landscape photo right here. This is Cathedral Rock in Sedona, Arizona. On the left is sort of all the process that I use to get here, to get to this render. And I how to review it sometimes on these streams. I'll answer questions. I'll eventually organize this sort of into a workflow so I can diagram out how I go from here to here to here to here to here to here. Once I'm here, then things get kind of fun and I sort of divert off into some different directions. So in this case, I'm working on what we call a meme card. And the best way to describe this is it's sort of like a piece of 3D art that I create that is based on, some interesting nuances, some inside jokes inside of Web3 and crypto and NFTs. And this collection that I'm working on is a follow-up to my original artwork that I created, a concept I created called Open Roads, Open Metaverse. And I won't go far into that right now, but basically this is the current work in progress. I think this has been rendered. I believe, yeah, I've got actually, let's just update this together. So this was sort of a quick mock-up and concept, but I do have the renders from between the streams. So between the morning stream and the afternoon stream, I did the renders. These aren't obviously done yet, but you can kind of see, come along for the ride and see the progress. I should actually put them, side by side so you can see the progress all the way along, but we'll figure that out for next time. So I think, sorry, wrong spot. Dropbox and projects, NFTs, 3D landscapes, Cathedral, output. I get this like a little better meme card. Okay, these are them right here. So sort of just to show you the difference between, actually getting these properly rendered and brought into Lightroom. I'll just bring this up here onto the scene and this one up here onto the scene. And you can kind of get an idea of this. This is the bottom one, was sort of just taken from a screenshot from my render engine from Blender. On the left is the vintage kind of tourism poster. On the right is the actual meme card. There's a bunch of issues with this one that I sort of started to fix, and the current, work in progress is these two. So on the left, you can kind of see the difference between this and this. Just on the left, you've got, the full render here. Just did a little bit more color grading and lighting to the background. Starting to look pretty good. And then on this one, we fixed a bunch of lighting, although there's actually some parts of the lighting that actually got degraded, and I explained in the previous stream why. But this will eventually be tightened up and fixed up. It's mostly to do with the lighting. This background image that I put in is not as detailed as this one, so we lost a lot of lighting on the balloons and on the side of the bus, but that will be fixed tomorrow on the stream. Definitely was happy with how this came together with the lighting here, but we're going to fix some stuff with the hat. We're going to lighten up the whole scene, and we're going to fix this rainbow fishing line. There's a bunch of stuff here that I want to do, including just tightening this up so you can really see the fishing line in this one and this one. but because it's glowing here, I want to clean that up so it doesn't look like it continues, even though the string goes through the fishing line. And then make this so it's got more of kind of a bloom effect like this one, and smaller. This is a bunch of stuff. That will be tomorrow. So again, typically I'm working on this project in the morning. If you're looking at my previous streams on YouTube or Twitch, Twitter, I don't know. It works, but it doesn't always organize it well. But Twitter and Twitch, I've been live streaming for the last 4 days on both, as well as Facebook and Twitter. But if you look back at the streams, they're all been renamed to the day and either AM or PM, and I'm trying to add descriptions of what I did. So if you actually are curious and want to go back and kind of look at something, you'd be able to do it. But yeah, the morning I work on this, and then in the evening, there's going to be a new section here. And I don't have it set up yet because we're actually just starting, but we'll simultaneously be working on this meme card, as well as down here, we're going to be working on a fully interactive 3D scene of this location in Unreal Engine. That is just started yesterday, and I was running into yesterday some pretty massive issues with the data. And last night I got an emergency Zoom call with a close friend who he walked me through the process, and I think he might have saved me in terms of how I'm handling these files in QGIS, which is a really kind of annoying program, to be honest. We were able to get some progress. I think I can clean this up in the first 5 or 10 minutes of the stream, and hopefully start to bring this into some of the more fun 3D software and start to manipulate the environment. Okay, so let's do a quick double check on what we did on QGIS last night, and I will actually, this was crashing a lot on me, so I'm hoping this is going to work. But I'll walk you through what I'm doing here. I always explain what I'm working, like what I'm doing as I work. One, it's a nice mental reminder when I'm watching the streams of what I'm doing. It helps me practice explaining my process to others. I would like to start to do YouTube tutorials and videos showing how I actually go through this. It helps me with that. And it also gives people watching kind of an understanding of what I'm working on. But if you have questions, if you want to know my process, if you want to know anything to do with Blender, Unreal Engine, QGIS, don't ask me, please. Gaia, Fortnite, which is where this is going to eventually go, just drop a comment, ask me a question. I'll stop the stream and answer. If you're experienced with streaming and you're watching, please just help me out with some tips. I'm learning about Twitch. I'm learning about streaming on YouTube and multi-streaming to Facebook and Twitter. If you just drop a comment and let me know you're here, say hi, say GM, anything you can do, it helps me a lot because I can actually just see it pop up on the screen, and then I can jump in and I can comment and answer it. I'll get rid of the follower goal. We hit that this morning, which was cool. I'm going to update that on Twitch. I'm using OBS. I'm going to be switching over to Streamlab tomorrow, hopefully, to kind of unlock some cool tools and things that I want to actually incorporate into my streams. Okay, let us see if we can make this happen. Okay, so what we're working with here is height maps. These are derived from a variety of data sources on the internet. Some of those sources are based on usually radar, which comes from space in orbit from satellites. That's typically what it is. It's typically like high coverage. It'll cover huge areas of the map, but it's low resolution. So when you're working with it, you can use it to recreate landscapes, but at either low resolution where it doesn't look very good, or you can do large scenes. So if you're creating a very large area and condensing it down to a smaller area, say to bring into Unreal Engine, like kind of a 1:4 scale or 1:10 scale, it's not bad. But if you're working with smaller areas or you want a lot of detail, you have to usually go to something like LiDAR. And LiDAR comes from fixed-wing airplanes that fly around. They shoot laser beams basically at the ground and measure the distance and use that to calculate the elevation. So what I've been working on is trying to make an area of interest over top of Cathedral Rock in Cathedral Rock in Sedona, Arizona. This is the scene here that we're kind of trying to recreate. This is the area of interest that I've created kind of in Google Earth. And I'm just sort of trying to get something that will work well in the 3D software. And I'm just going to start working on it. And I'll walk through things as I go. And hopefully we'll come out with something that works fairly well. Okay, so last night we did a bunch of merging of data. And the good news was we ended up with a metric merged file, which is this guy right here. And this file includes both low resolution data on the outside. Okay, so this is the low resolution data, and high resolution data on the inside. This is the LiDAR. You can see where the pixels actually merge. But if you look closely, for the most part, it lines up pretty well. You can kind of see the dark part through here. You can see the dark part through here. This is a riverbed. And what I've been kind of trying to do now is export this into a 3D tool called Gaia. And we're running into a tiny issue, which I can solve a number of ways, which is basically the file that we have is creating like a mosaic pattern on the landscape. So I'll show you what this looks like, and then I may kind of go through this process and adjust this in QGIS, trying some different things to kind of get this into a place that we can use it. So this is opening in widescreen. Just give me a second to load the file, and then it'll be able to bring it into the stream. So here it is here. Okay, so this is Gaia, and what Gaia specializes in is taking, like, either if you want to make a completely fictional landscape, you want a volcano, you want cliffs, mountains, different areas, Gaia can use a bunch of actual scientific processes to simulate how different terrains on the earth form. That's the best way I could describe it. So, you want a volcano, it can kind of simulate how, that particular volcano would form, how sedimentation would come down the side of the mountain, how rocks would form. It uses a bunch of processes, and it actually does a really good job of simulating real world terrain. You can do that with a series of nodes. If you've heard me talk before, I love node-based workflows. I now use it in DaVinci Resolve and in Blender and in Gaia and Unreal Engine, and it is something that if you've never used before is super intimidating, super overwhelming, but I assure you, if you take some time to learn it, it will pay off huge dividends as you kind of go through your artistic or your art career. So if you have questions on nodes, I'm happy to help with explaining them and helping people understand them. But also what Gaia can do is it can manipulate real world terrain and add a lot of detail and actually add mass and coloring, which I'm going to kind of show you here as we go. Well, I'll show you here. I'll do this just to kind of set this up, because I'll be working in this program, and I don't want, if someone's watching, I don't want this to be like completely ridiculous understanding what I'm doing. So this is a previous project that I was working on, and I will continue to work on. It's in the previous streams, but for some different reasons, I've decided to put it on pause and switch over to Cathedral, this location in Arizona, so that all the streams are consistent with the same real world location every day when I stream. But this is something that I was pretty excited about when I got this to work. So this is using radar data. And what's cool is the reason why this actually kind of works is because it's such a huge location. This mountain range is massive across, and at this scale, the detail is not too bad. So what's happening here is Gaia is importing the height map, which is just a file that looks like this. I don't know if maybe I can't show this properly. Yeah, I probably am not. Maybe I can pin it and see if I can show it. I guess I can. It basically looks like this. Patagonia World. Source GIS data. Yeah, this is basically it here. So it looks like this, and this is basically a height map, and everywhere that's lighter or white on the screen is actually higher elevation. Everything that's darker on this becomes lower elevation. So Gaia can interpret this, turn it into essentially a 3D file, and then you can start to apply a bunch of nodes to adjust the terrain to make it have more detail and to highlight certain features. So left to right, here's how this sort of works. Some of these ones we're testing, so they're ignored. But we've got the height map here. We add some basic erosion to it. So you can see we added some sort of crevices and sort of added a little bit of detail to the landscape. Just kind of look in this area and watch the before and after. We then stratified the terrain, which added, again, some more details. This is a pretty heavy process here. There you go. So again, it kind of eroded the terrain down. It added some more detail to these sections. And if I flip back and forth, you can see this is the original. And now this is the stratified with erosion. We added a rugged filter, which added even more detail to the terrain. Again, it's going to process. Each of these filters is pretty intensive, and the stream might get a little slow. This is the progress bar in Gaia, so it's actually processing right now the terrain to show you what it looks like with the rugged filter. There we go. I mean, it's subtle, but you're starting to see more detail come into the scene. And then I don't remember what this one is doing. I think this is adding. I honestly can't remember. Yeah, it might just be an unused node. Maybe it didn't actually have. It's adding some rocky surface at 2% strength. It must be adding a little bit of detail. Maybe when you zoom in, we're at a 2K preview, so maybe, yeah, it's just adding a little bit of surface detail. It's hard to see here, but when we export this as like a high-res file, it makes a difference. And then we did a bunch of masking for the lakes, which happens over here, and the final output is this. So this basically pulls in a bunch of additional detail, and we go in Gaia just in terms of creating a landscape from this level of detail, from this to that. Okay, so once we go through that, the next thing we can do, it's sort of in the wrong order, is we're actually adding snow to the terrain. So with this, we are simulating both snowfall, which is here, which is simulating, not only where the snow would fall at elevation, but also taking into account there's an entire glacier area here, so I've sort of simulated that more snow would be falling coming from this side. It's melting based on the sun and based on the slopes, and it's accumulating, and like pushing it, just like exactly simulating what snow would do. I've also added some masking to add some glaciers. So this area has glaciers that are kind of coming through this back part of the scene. And then I'm actually eroding those glaciers to make them look something like this. So now they've got kind of like a cool glacier pattern on them. The final output of those two combined is this, where it's hard to see it, but there's actually some snow on here and the glaciers, and we use that to generate some different masks that we can use to color the terrain. So just to give you an example, this now is a mask that where everywhere it's white is where there's going to be snow. Everywhere that's black, there's no snow. So we can use this for future texturing in Unreal Engine and Blender and any other tool. So we generate a bunch of masks. So we do things like we generate where the slopes are. So all of this has very, very minimal slope. So it's just a flat terrain. Anything that's black is actually has some elevation slope to it, right, in terrain. We can mask out the high parts of the terrain, the medium parts of the terrain, and the low parts of the terrain. we can put a slope again on, sorry, this is the shallow one. So this is only, everything white is a very shallow slope. Everything here is a higher slope, and I can change those settings and dial it in. And then I can also do some manual masking, which is here. I've masked out where there would be sort of an alpine region. I've masked out where there would be glaciers. And I've masked out anywhere that doesn't include lakes, which is these three areas right here. And when you start merging these together, you get a lake mask. This is the 4 lakes that are present in the scene. You get a mask for all of the flat ground, so everything that has no slope. You get a mask for the peaks, which is all the top parts of the mountains. And you can create masks for rocks. So this is anything that kind of has some elevation and a bumpy surface. So there's a lot of like a contour convex kind of thing going on. And this one's texture protrusion, which is like kind of a really micro detail mask that pulls out. Basically, I would almost call it like bumps in the terrain is the way that I would call this mask. See, it kind of pulls out like all sorts of little ridges and bumps all over the terrain, which helps with texturing. Okay. This one I think is just, yeah, this is a super steep slope. So this is a bunch of masking that I use, which I may actually end up like exporting and bringing into... Let's do this. So while we're here, we're going to go into my assets, and I'm going to create a new folder. I've got lots of 3D assets in here. I'm going to call this Gaia. And then I'll open this up. I'll call this masks. Okay. And yeah, this is going to save all of the masks that I have on this terrain. It just sort of might be useful. And I'll even, well, I think I'll do this one from scratch, but I don't need snow for this. The masks are cool, and I'll probably export this color one before I show you. So this one will be color, which I'll use as well. Okay. So then coloring is really cool in Gaia, because what you start with is these they're called satellite maps. What they are is usually you pick a particular terrain on a satellite image, and you grab all of the color palette for that particular terrain. So you end up with like these beautiful little gradients that you can use to color, so you don't have like a static green. Like it's not just, hey, this is grass, it's green. You end up using a bunch of different gradients, and it actually ends up adding a bit of detail to your masking or to your coloring of the terrain. So this is just like painting a base layer of grass across the entire terrain. And then I'm generating a color for rocks. So this is the color that I've used for all the rocks. And this is one for peaks, which is sort of a darker rock, like kind of a granite rock that you see often at high elevations on mountains. And then what I'm doing here is I'm using the masks that I generated over here to merge this color and this color. And there it is. So now you've got this grass that's kind of going through all the flat parts of the terrain. And then you've got anything that sort of is higher elevation with a bit of, slope to it or protrusion, you're getting the rock color. And then on top of that, we can say, well, we want to really highlight the peaks of this scene. So we can add a new filter and actually filter out these high elevation peaks. And you get kind of a cool look here. You remember I did a water mask earlier, so we can actually add in the water mask. And now we have some blue coloring the 4 lakes that are in this scene. And then the last part is we grab the snow mask that we did earlier, and we put the snow on the scene. So now we have grass, rock, peaks or granite, and water and snow all together, and we have sort of a cool 3D replica of Patagonia. Now this is Argentina, Patagonia. We then can output this into a bunch of different file types that you can use in 3D software. I'll also export this graph. And if I can lock this process in, essentially I can take any location in the world, I can source the correct data, and I can start to build out these 3D worlds pretty quickly. So that's what you're kind of seeing now is me, figuring these out and working through my process and sharing what I know, and maybe I get some help along the way, maybe I help others, but I'm trying to be as transparent as I can about what I'm doing, and take the best of kind of these clips and bring them out to places like YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all that to sort of show people what I'm working on. So that's why we're here. Okay, so we're gonna now open up the the Cathedral project, and we're just gonna rename this one O1 Terrain, and we're gonna just we're just gonna get rid of everything, and we're gonna simply just start building out the terrain, and we'll go back to QGIS if we need to, because I was running into some issues. So basically what we're doing is we're bringing in a file, and that file lets you pick a path, and we're going into QGIS and layers, and we exported a bunch of files last night. So this is the current one, I think. We merged metric. This is the rendered version and the non-rendered, and we were experimenting with last night whether this is better as like a rendered out RGB geotiff or a standard geotiff. That's getting technical, but I'll at least show you what this will look like. So this is a little problem that we're having, and I'm just sort of looking into how I can essentially solve it. So just bear with me as I sort of play around with some of these settings. So this is the height map merged. We'll call this height map non-raster. Okay, just so I can experiment with this in the future. And there are some technical things here. This is not generating, in my mind, exactly what we want in terms of like a normalized terrain data, but we should be able to manipulate this a little bit and see, basically see like, can we get this into something that's actually usable? So let me just see here. Okay, so if we go into here, we can start to play with some of these settings, and I did this previously, and I'm just curious how close I can get in terms of getting a terrain that actually kind of makes sense in here. I don't think this scale is going to work, so I don't think we want log. I want to see if the clipping doesn't work right to me. The blur is something that I may want to use, but I want to use it in the other data. Okay. I'm going to bring in the other file and just see if it actually is any different. So this is going to be our rasterized version. Rendered version, maybe is a better way to say it. And we're going to just change this to, let's change it to raw for now. We'll keep the high quality scaling off. We'll turn off all of these. Yeah. So this is when we read the raw file, we don't get anything. When we normalize it, oh, this is something else actually that I did that I forgot about. Under build, we can also adjust the terrain definition. So this is currently 0.61 meters a pixel. So I think this is in meters. So one of the things we can do in QGIS is we can try to get a feel for how far this is from one side to the other, and just see if it actually brings this out. So scale 1 to magnifier. I'm just gonna see if maybe I can get a distance. No, that's not what we wanted. We want this one. We want to see if we can get I know there's got to be a easy way to do this. So let's just bring this over here. Okay, so we're gonna search for measuring distance in QGIS. Okay. Click the measure line. Okay, let's see if we can find that measure line. So QGIS is notoriously not the most user-friendly software. If you heard me yesterday, I was much less kind. But it's also because I'm not, I don't work in this every day. There would be, you would think, like a little measure line in the attributes toolbar. Do these actually highlight which one they are? That's digitizing. That's source. That's digitizing. Can we get a attributes toolbar? Just want to see where that went. Okay, so it's this one. So this is identify open field toolbox, show, okay, measure. Okay, let's see if we measure from here to here. We get a result of, it looks like 2,795 meters, so 2.7 kilometers. That feels about right to me. So hopefully I think this would make sense. Yeah, and then height, we've already converted that to meters. The height of this should be from 1,512 to 1,206 meters, which does feel a little bit wrong, but we're going to see if that actually works. So let's change this to 2,795 meters in Gaia and see what happens. So 2,750. What did I can't remember what I said. 2,795. It's not letting me change it now. 27. That's weird. Okay, well, let's get it as close as we can. 2842. But then the height of this is where it gets crazy, because in QGIS we're only getting, really, in at least from my perspective, we're only getting a range here of 309 meters. So I'm just curious if any of this ends up actually adjusting or affecting us in here. So no on this. Okay, it actually does. It's probably fairly accurate, to be honest. Yeah, I feel like this would probably be fairly accurate. And this, I think, would be adjusting the data based on what I did. Yeah, it is. Okay, so that's a good sign. So basically, if we input the correct distance and the correct height, we get a pretty reasonable approximation of the landscape. Now, the real problem here is this feature is obviously pretty pretty substantial, but the rest of it is just doesn't have a lot of detail. So, you know, we may need to exaggerate it for what we're doing, or we may need to trim down the area of interest. So right now, if I looked at this, I could tell you that the spot that we took the photo, so this is one of the cool things we can do in QGIS, is we can actually show some satellite data. So this is the AOI. Yeah, so ignore all this stuff because this is old stuff, but this is the file, right? And we can actually go into XYZ tiles, and we can grab OpenStreetMap. And now we have basically OpenStreetMap on top of our satellite data. And we can even go into our satellite data, and we can go to symbology, I think it is, and we can change the, where is it? Transparency, right? So we can change the global opacity. I mean, look, QGIS is very cool when you know how to use it. It's just the UX is really bad. But check it out. So when we apply this, what we can see is we can kind of see the terrain that we're working with. And I know from doing this that the actual location that I shot my photo, which is this right here, is actually right here. Okay, so this is super secret slick rock. That's literally what the trail is called, super secret slick rock. And if you follow this road here, this right here is where it was shot. Okay, so if I'm building out a real world terrain where we're going to walk around, we're going to hang out, we're going to like really kind of look through, we're going to really explore the environment. The trick is we want the smallest AOI we can while maintaining, like the point that we're actually shooting at and some general perspective around it. So, if you kind of look at this in Sedona, you can see that there's trails that go all the way through here. So you can hike to this, you can hike to this, you can hike from here, I think is the main trailhead that you can hike up to Cathedral Rock. I think there's another one over here. Yeah, so look, easy breezy trail. All of this, yeah, it's super cool, right? So, we've got all the easy like all the trails that you could find are all on here. This is the Cathedral Rock Trail. So it comes up here, it comes up the mountain range, and if you look, it actually, this must be like the vortex. Yeah, I was reading about the vortex in in Sedona. Well, it's a whole interesting topic I don't know enough about. But anyway, this is the trail, right? And I think this maybe we could look into whether this is perfect or not, but you can see that it is predicting where the elevation would be versus where it would be on the map. And we'd have to look. It looks to me that maybe this is slightly off. Just looking around to see if there's any other good indication. Like the riverbed looks accurate. Generally, this terrain looks good. But we can also, let me just see if we can get some satellite. Well, let's see if we can get this terrain. I don't know if this actually will work. Yeah, okay, so what this is this is global MapSyn, whatever this is, global terrain. Super low resolution. You could probably clip this and get it, but it's not actually going to do what we want. I was looking for some satellite data. I have a bunch of what am I trying to say? I have a bunch of tools like Mapbox and Google Cloud Tiles and different ways we could bring in satellite data. I don't know if let's hold on this. We'll maybe do it on the stream, but basically I'll go grab my Mapbox tokens and stuff, and I'll pull them in here, and we can see if we can get some like actual satellite data of this. One of the things we want to double check with is the projection. So this is, oh, okay, so this might be, let me just see if we reproject this. Oh no, this is the maps, and we don't want that one. Let's get rid of this guy. Let's remove. But we want the OpenStreetMap. Okay, let's see if we can reproject OpenStreetMap. I know there is other ways to do this, but I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to warp reproject OpenStreetMap from its source, which I think is, yeah, it's, well, it says it's, I think it will just pick the source up, but I know I want to project it to the project. So let's see what happens. No, maybe you can't reproject. Yeah, maybe you can't reproject this system. I'd have to look up if you can do this. Yeah, that's definitely not going to do it. So now the projection's way off. But that's something I can figure out afterwards. Now I might have lost it. Okay, that's fine. I'll just remove this layer, and I'll just go grab it again. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's close, but it may be slightly off. But it's not going to affect what we're doing. The point of what I was trying to make is, if you were building like a map, like think of like a video game, you know, you want to walk around, we want to explore it. You want to kind of not cut off anything that's important. You want to make sure, you know, it doesn't like cut into the middle of a mountain. You've got some nice buffer around the outside, but the bigger this gets, the less detail you're going to have on your particular area. So I was kind of contemplating whether I might cut this down a little bit, because if we're in Gaia, you can see, you know, and we're going to fix this. Inside of this, you can see that there's a pretty good amount of detail. And actually, if I go back in here and bring this out, I was looking at this the other day. It doesn't look that great here, but if I change the preview to 1K or even 2K, you can see where the detail comes in. So look, now we've got pretty good detail here on this scene. And I would have to go look at some of the other tools that I use and just see whether or not, you know, there's any more detail. But the difference is like literally between the detail we have on this LiDAR data, which is the inside square, and the detail on the radar data, which is like, it's like Minecraft, right? It's like, it's super low resolution. It barely gets any elevation, but it does also help us a little bit when it comes to sort of organizing this terrain. So let me just play a little bit with these files. Let me just see here, respond to this. Yeah, so like, let me just see. Which one are we in here? Okay, so there's really not much of a difference between these two. I don't see any. There is a bit of banding going on here. So yeah, we'll keep this one. So we're going to keep this non-raster file and delete this guy. Okay. So we're going to keep this file. I'm going to just attempt to see what I can do to kind of make this terrain fit. And then when you kind of see the plan for this, I think it'll make sense. What I want to look into is whether I can get a little bit more that does anything. I want to see if I can get like a little bit more detail and elevation change out of this. Because even though it may be correct, it doesn't, it's going to feel not great when we bring it in. So, for example, we saw what log did. Oh, that's interesting. So log actually does, I mean, it really does emphasize more terrain. And I may have actually done this before. So you can kind of see that it brings up all of the terrain, like it exaggerates all of the terrain in the scene, but it also clamps down a little bit on the top. See, yeah, that's not going to do it. Again, for reference, what I like to use, although it is not necessarily accurate, but it's usually pretty good, is if we go into Google Earth, you can kind of get a feel for this, right? This is the Google Earth data. And I actually can get this data, but I've kind of explained before, it looks good from up here, but when you get into the actual details, it's not bad. I may actually incorporate some of this Google Earth data in this scene, and I can kind of show you how I do that. And yeah, it does a really good job though of getting these crevices. So I have an idea that I'm going to maybe test out and try, because it may make a huge difference. Let's go back into Gaia. So you can see with this one, they're all still there, but you can see because of the way that height maps get generated, you lose a lot of that detail, and obviously there's no photo over top of it, which we can get and import at some point in the future. Okay, I'm going to turn off log, and I'm just going to mess around with some of the other settings down here. That's not what we want. Level. I almost want like a clamp analog, but no. Okay. Just curious what this will look like. It doesn't really add any detail. Well, it does a bit, but okay. It's interesting. I'm gonna just try a few things here and see what we end up with. I still think I need to clamp down this terrain, or I need to mask out this terrain and make this whole thing smaller. But we're gonna just test out a few things here and see if we can smooth out this low resolution terrain on the outside. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab a noise node. It's this one here. Actually, we want, I think it's denoise or it's blur. It's going to be one of these ones. So we'll see what each one of these does. So if we bring it into, say, the blur node, see now what we did was we smoothed out this part of the terrain, which is good. And we can actually change this until, you know, whatever we want. We can do couple iterations sometimes, bring the power down. But basically, this solves that blocking issue. But we want to do it based on a mask. So there's a couple ways we could probably do this. So this is going to let us essentially draw a mask, which is not what we want. Sorry, I may have missed chat. If hopefully I didn't. I have the chat up, but I think it might not be running. Let me just double check something. I think we're okay. Jim, good afternoon. If you have any questions, there we go. That's gonna, I think, post out to all the group chats, other than Twitter, which is honestly just annoying. Or X, sorry. Cool. Okay. Like what I want is I basically want this. Okay, so I want this exact dimensions exported into I want to basically export this file, but to this extent. Sorry, this is the AOI, and I'm trying to think how to explain this. I want this file clipped. This size of a file with this over top. Okay, so basically, no, that's the merge. Okay, so D. Okay. Basically, I want this. So what I want is I want to export a file that clips out this inside of a larger image that looks like this. And I mean, the question is, like, is this actually doable? Let me think about it. think we might have got it. Sorry, I had to really think through what I was doing there. Okay, so what we did, and maybe this will work, maybe it won't, but I'm hoping it will. Is let's see if it works first before I actually, before I actually explain what I did. Ladder mask. Yeah, okay. It works. It works. In fact, I may be able to manipulate this a little bit more to blur this transition. So if I take this box and I apply like a layer, if I apply a layer, adjustment layer, a filter, a blur, like a Gaussian blur, and then I export this out as a ladder mask again. We'll just replace it, and then we'll just go grab, this is RGB. Okay. I don't know why I did that. Okay, so you're kind of getting the idea, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell Gaia where the good data is and where the bad data is. So what I did was I did the Gaussian blur, and actually, I may not have to do that. I may actually be able to adjust, like, I may be able to add a blur node. I may be able to isolate the edges and do all this through Gaia. So what I'll do is I'll undo the Gaussian blur, okay, and I'll just export a quick export the PNG. I'll go back to the original mask. This is the correct mask, right? Okay, and now I'll experiment with a few things. So what I would want is the inside is the good part. So this blur was fine, but the problem is we want to expand this mask, okay, because and we want to scale it probably by like a number. We used to have a like a scale. Yeah, that's what I want. So if I went to say like 110 or even maybe 105, let's try 110. Okay, and now export this same file, and we'll call it LiDAR mask blur extended. And now we go back in here, and we can try both. So if I go to this file and I just duplicate it, can't remember what is it. Oh, okay, I guess I thought it was Control D, but it never works. Okay, so if we take this file and we say this is the LiDAR mask. Oh, I guess I didn't save it. File. Sorry, I should have had Photoshop. Was probably not easy to see on the screen. Okay, so export this. No, I called it blur extended. Okay, I don't know why that didn't show up there. Blur extended. I'm blind. Okay, and we changed the mask to this. Oh, I went the wrong way. That was so dumb. So what I did was I scaled that. but I went opposite way that I should have. So what I should have done is I should have went into like 90%. So say, let's go 90% up here, right? And then export as this blur extended. So I think you probably, if you're following or watching, you probably understand what I'm doing, right? I'm saying there's, we have good data, bad data. But we want to have both because we do want to extend the boundary of the scene. And I'll kind of show you why here in a second. We have good data and bad data. We're blurring out the bad data so that it doesn't have these big bumps, but we're also saying like, don't touch the good data. So if we go back to this extended, you can see now we kind of have a good transition. It's still a little bit, of a bumpiness here. That's just the amount of the Gaussian, but you can kind of see that we've got something that starts to fade into still like kind of the same terrain outline. It's not, it's not like it's fitting the terrain. You can see like here, it's fitting the terrain. Everything looks good, but you get high level of detail and low level detail. And when you start to watch how we add a bunch of actual simulated detail onto this terrain, I think this is going to work. What I was going to experiment with is I can take the raw file, because again, we're also here, we're trying to create a process that's repeatable. So I experiment, and then eventually I'm getting closer to being like, okay, I could do this for any location, anywhere in the world with minimal effort and get something that looks good. And I think it's sort of, you're watching the progression of me solve the problems and then hopefully have repeatable steps in the future. So better than actually using Photoshop, because that's introducing another tool, is first question is, before we adjust this, what would it look like if we actually used the built-in tools within Gaia? So I'm going to look at a few things and just see if they can do anything. So the first thing is to see what happens if we bring in a blur node and then kick it in here. So you can see the difference. If I disable this, I know there's a bypass. Okay, so if I turn off the bypass, it's hard to tell if that actually did anything. No, it's bringing. Okay, so it feels like it did. So if I go here, let's pin this. Okay, so this is the original, right? And now if we bring this in, I guess I didn't. Oh, okay. A little bit of brain issues here. Just remind yourself what's happening. We're taking the height and we're blurring it. And what we want is the mask to tell it where to blur. So this is pinned, so this is what we're going to always see the result from. And what we're doing is, if we bring directly in, this is what we get. We get this sort of harsh gradient. If we bring the blur in, we get a little bit of changes. But if I go power, change this. Let's try Gaussian. That might take a little bit to process. It doesn't feel like it's doing what we really want. And maybe we could run a couple iterations on it, but it's blurring. To me, it's blurring the wrong way. So I don't think that's what we want. Let me see if there's any other way. There might. I just may have to kind of slowly figure this one out. No. Denoise. Let's see what the denoise node does. So, first of all, let's just see what the denoise node does here. No, that's not going to work. No. Okay, forgive me on this one. Um, hmm. Interesting. I'm actually super curious. I I really hate to manipulate this way. How do you add another node here? There, double click. Hmm. It's really interesting. Um, so what I'm sorry just kind of hit, I hadn't seen that node before. So in a perfect world, you know, you're actually interpreting the proper height, and all of this is to scale, and that's sort of like a repeatable process, right? That we don't have to keep coming back to over and over again. But it is nice to know that you have this node, which essentially was doing what I was sort of complaining about before, which is you're adding a lot of like detail at this level in terms of elevation, but you're kind of almost clamping the total elevation. See that? And yeah, it's just you can actually kind of manipulate this if you're trying to stylize this terrain. Oh, it's too much, but yeah, you can kind of. Anyway, it's super cool. You could just sort of like really get something that you're happy with the terrain through this. It's pretty neat. That's resetting. Okay, but let's ignore that for the moment. Let's focus on this blur problem. So we are trying to see if there's a node that we could add that would. I'll tell you what. I'll do some experimenting on the own just because it's gonna be a little bit annoying to watch this. And I can do this in Photoshop pretty quickly. So we had this right, but we just had the blur amount wrong. So easy way here is just to kind of undo this until we get to the original, which should be this. And then what we want is first to transform this down to probably 90%. And then we want to apply the blur and the Gaussian blur, but we want to do it quite a lot less than what we just did. You know, why, where am I? Am I missing a? I'm like missing a window somewhere here. Oh, it's off this thing. Yeah, so like maybe something like this, and then we can just experiment with this until we get something that works. Not ideal, but okay. So it's getting better. So you can see that, you know, there is a pretty good line here now. I would say that you can't really see I mean, you can obviously see where it transitions, but you can't see the blocks that are here. And if anything, you know, we can adjust this. So that's less. That's more. And we want something that has as much detail as possible without those ridges. And I'm just wondering if we go to, say, 3 iterations, do we get a bit more detail? So like something like that. Okay. That's the basic idea. Now we have essentially a terrain that goes from high resolution to lower resolution at the gradient, and we can, you know, certainly adjust that even more so. Like I think maybe we could even go edit, and we could go transform, scale, and we could probably even go less. We could probably even go like 85%. And then we could apply our blur, and we could probably do a little bit more. So we can export, and this one we'll just do extended V2, and then we'll go back into Gaia, and we'll just change this to V2. Yeah, so what I did was I sort of brought it in even more with a bit more of a gradient. So now it's even less of an edge. Okay, so we now have, I would say, let's get rid of this and let's organize this a little bit. So we want to get rid of all these. So we have the height map, and then we have the blur, and we're blurring it by the mask. So we can rename this to blur. We'll go mask, high res, low res, because this is the mask between the high res and the low res data. And then this one is going to be rename. This is going to be terrain blur. It's called terrain blurred. Okay, and because we may use this mask on other things as we go here in the future, so it's kind of important to have these named properly as we go through our process. Okay, so we've got some terrain blurred. So now, like, let's just for fun see how much detail we can get back in the blurred terrain without touching the inside terrain. So just to give you an example, if we take this terrain, we could also, you know, let's just take this terrain from here, and let's just add an erosion node, and let's bring this in, and now it's going to do some processing, and there you go. Right away, you know, with kind of almost no effort, we now actually have what looks like a little bit more detail in the outside. It also affected the inside, but we could just simply say, you know, where do we want to do this? Well, we can just bring this mask in, and now that effect is only going to happen on the outside area of the terrain. So all of this erosion that just happened is only happening on the outside, not on the inside. So there's a good example. Another good example of something we could do is stratify. I know this one is a good one. There's another one that does, it might be stratify, but there's another one that does something. But let's just try this one, right? So if I go into stratify, it's going to run a bunch of stuff. We can add our mask. And if you look closely at what this did, is it took the terrain and it kind of added back in a little bit of a like ridge effect. And truthfully, if we end up getting into this with the terrain, and I honestly don't know, we probably are going to have to amplify some of the terrain in the lower areas. Because, for example, this is where we would shoot. This is where the shot was. It's right here. So I kind of remember this. And, you know, it was kind of like it had a bit of a ridge here, and then it kind of dropped off pretty sharp. So this is not doing a great job of reflecting, whereas like this is. But it's possible that we can use some of these effects to do it. And we can also take this same effect and we can bring it into the erosion node again. And we can combine the erosion with the stratify. So there's some cool stuff we can do. And just sort of look at what happens if we change the amount. So there you go. Back to the erosion. And now we've got, you know, some detail coming in across this entire area. Let me see some, you know, kind of curious with this intact. I'm just kind of curious what this would do from a water standpoint. So you can do is grab the river node, and this should take a second. It's going to start to simulate where there might be rivers. Okay, so it simulated that we have a river running here and here. And, you know, just for kind of for fun, we can really ramp up the amount of water. Ramp up the width. And a cool exercise here for us to sort of see if this is simulating fairly well is we can go grab, well, we could grab Google Earth, we could grab some data in QGIS, and we can kind of figure out, like, is there rivers in this area? So remember, we're shooting, my shot is from, I should actually add a little pin to the map. I think it'll make it a little bit easier because I kind of tend to lose the location. So let's grab a pin, and we're going to call this, we'll save it to this current project, and we're going to call this the viewpoint. What would we want to call this? We'll call it viewpoint, but this is essentially where the photo was taken that we're using for reference. So curious if we had an icon for camera photo. There we go. Okay. So sweet. So this way we don't lose this. Okay. So, and we would probably want to bring in like a shapefile in here so we actually have the same AOI or the same area, because this is not, I don't think, consistent. But there is Oak Creek. So Oak Creek, if we were to match up, let's get rid of this viewpoint. Okay, so we're going to match up a few things. So if we go into, first of all, into Gaia, and we look at this, make sure we have, you know, the actual, okay, that looks fine. So here's our viewpoint. Here's Cathedral Rock. Did we get our rivers right? Well, we got a river running through here and up and a couple coming down. If we look on here, we've got a river running here and it's going off this way, but it doesn't actually cut through. Well, maybe it does. It looks like almost there's maybe like a bit of a dry riverbed down here, but there's no water. But the river does go Oak Creek, because I've been down here. If you walk down this trail and you get into the river, this is Oak Creek. And it looks like it goes up this way. So if we go back to Gaia, it did an okay job. It didn't really simulate the river running up here. But again, this is because it's just trying to predict. There's a road here. It's trying its best to predict where some of these things are, and we can guide it in the future and sort of adjust the terrain to get this to all work. Okay, cool. Let's go back to Gaia. I'm just gonna take a peek at the settings and see what is happening. So it is getting the river, it's bringing it up there. We can do all sorts of adjustments here to actually make sure that it doesn't go up this. And by the way, all this is doing is it's saying where water would be with a certain amount of rain. So it is possible that based on this terrain, that if it rained, there could be a river that would form here. But if there's not enough water, these often will not be present, or they will be just like dry riverbeds. So if you kind of look on here and you could imagine, there being a flood, it's predicting that water would flow through this little valley here, but there may not be actual water. It's also predicting that there could be potentially river through here, but that also could be coming from, if this is LiDAR data, any kind of road that they would say, dig a road through here, it would form a natural riverbed. Whereas if there was a flood, water came down here, it could flood over and onto this road and flow down this way. And like probably the city has some, terraforming and stuff in here. There's some nice houses. So, who knows what they've done. But there was a flood actually in this area at this time. And this LiDAR scan is from, I think, post-flood that I actually grabbed this data from when I got it from the municipality. So it is possible that, some of this has sort of been, fixed or adjusted. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of see what other types of things I can do to this terrain. I meant to watch a tutorial today because there was someone who did a tutorial on how to add like texture detail in Gaia to these types of vertical terrain. So it may be a situation where I've talked about this before, where when you get vertical terrain with height maps, it maps like this. It maps like a stretched pixels, and it's really hard to work with. He may have come up with a solution to that, and I'm going to go watch that at some point and see. Because right now you'll get kind of, it won't look good when you import this into certain 3D software. What I will probably do here is, it's 3:30 now. I'll probably end up getting a coffee and a water and a break here. And then I think I'm probably going to go to 5 today, 5 p.m. Eastern. So that's an hour and a half from now. I want to give myself some extra time to sort of organize these streams after and get some clips and stuff. So I think we'll end this stream with me trying to bring this into Unreal Engine and just seeing what it looks like at scale. So we can come back and make adjustments to this tomorrow. So I'll do a couple more things, then I'll take a break. There's all sorts of different erosion techniques here. Let's just get rid of the rivers for a second. We'll just bypass it and go to here. So this is micro erosion. So it's just adding little details to the terrain that aren't there. But it's super helpful in terms of adding more, more detail and more, like a little bit more detail to the terrain. You kind of see it when you zoom out. I want to see with this Stratify, I want to see if what happens if we don't bring it into the mask. I'd like to be using it. So then just sort of, one thing you can't do in Gaia, unfortunately, is one thing you can't do in Gaia is you can't, like, I can't kind of add like a pin or something to this map right now. So I kind of lose where the point of view was from Google Earth. So you remember our viewpoint is over here. And if you kind of go to this scene here, it's just north west of where this is. So it's basically this section here. And I can just see that if we go back to the terrain blurred, like you can't really see what this can do, right? It's pretty crazy. But it also can start to do things that make it a little bit harder for me to figure out. Just looking to see if there's any. Doesn't work. Oh, it wasn't selected. I'm going to talk through this just so I kind of can wrap my head around what I'm doing. So I'll tell you what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is, I'm thinking that if I knew 100%, which I know there are ways to do this, and I probably going to go through this process on my own and then come back, that the actual elevation was correct, right? So if we look at this scene, the stream's going to get pretty bad here. Okay, so if we look at, Google Earth, and we're saying, okay, well, here's our viewpoint. I mean, compared to this is just a hill. There's almost nothing to it. But see the sort of cliff, the way that you've got a nice cliff here with a bit of layers, like kind of bounces. And then you've got another layer here, right? And then it kind of follows the same pattern. You can see bounce, layer. So if we knew that all this was accurate and the heights were correct, then I'd feel really comfortable with this. But I don't know if they are, and I think it's probably it's squishing the terrain down. So one of the things that I think would be interesting in Gaia is to do to really, it's hard to tell with the scale, but to add the curve, I think it was called. I'm just curious now what this one is, what recurve does. Oh, okay, so it kind of adds adds a bit of almost like sand dune looking stuff to that. That's not what we want. We wanted it's actually called a curve. Yeah, so let me go to find that again. We looked at this earlier. Interesting. Maybe it was just a curve. Yeah, it was just curve. So just kind of. Hey, Spider Sniper. I didn't see you. I missed this earlier. I'm kind of focused in here, and I think my stream chat honestly is not working. I'm looking at it on Restream right now. Yeah. So is this like animated? Is it just like a still? Is this something you do for other people or something you do for yourself? I've been looking at some of the Restream stuff, and I've been kind of curious. Yeah, so what I was just doing there is I was bringing in I'm bringing in what I would say it just was easier for me to do it that way. In Google Earth, I was just sort of creating an area of interest. I was hoping I may have to use Google Earth Pro that I could get a perfect square with measurements so that I would get something that I would be like, okay, I know this is X, size. I know I can, probably do it now. Maybe in here I can get some data on it, but I was hoping that I could create it, with it, and then I probably have to reproject it. And I don't actually know. So now I have, basically I have an AOI, and the good news is that it is all inside of this. So I have this is the original file, and this is the smaller one. So I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna just so I don't see why this shouldn't work. I'm gonna do raster, and I'm gonna extraction. I'm gonna clip raster by a mask layer. So it's this same file that I've been using, and the mask layer is going to be this reprojected one, and we're just going to run it, and I think it's going to work. Yeah, so if I kind of close everything else out here, interesting. Just don't know why it set this back. There's something else here, something else below it. Not really sure why it hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Something got to be about that, but I don't know why it won't clip to that size. So it did clip it down. If you look at this and then look at this, like it clipped down the file, but it didn't clip it down to what I wanted, which was this. I don't know. It could have something to do with just, maybe you can't crop to this tilted file. If you look at, this is part of the problem of viewing stuff on a map. The whole thing is tilted to the right. So really what it's kind of asking for, which again, I don't know if there's like a specific, proper up, but it's probably looking for something more like, it's closer, but it's not full. I don't know now which wood it actually got. So funny. Yeah, okay. Well, that's not what I wanted. Okay, cool. I'll jump back into this in a second here after a break. I would like to figure out. I don't see why you can't. I mean, I guess it's just maybe the way the pixels are. Because all the pixels are this way, maybe it doesn't want to cut them. Like you have to cut them to the same square. That's fine. If that's the case, that's cool. I was just hoping I could kind of bring down the size of this terrain, because I'll show you what I was going to do, and the more I can kind of like resize this part, because this is kind of the primary, most important part of the terrain, is this whole area on the outside, and then up into these areas. So really, the actual LiDAR data, right? The actual one without the blur. So this guy here, this box is what's annoying is this is really actually really good. The only issue is that there's some data that I need in here, which is where the photo was shot. So it's like the more I think about it, it's just how important is that, and is there another solution, because we're really expanding this entire terrain almost without needing to. But I will show you what I was going to do, and it's pretty straightforward. I think I already have the mask for it. So if I go into File, hopefully I still have this saved. I think it's just in a different folder. It was in Patagonia World, and then probably Working Gaia. Maybe QJet, no. Maybe a Source. No. It was kind of a weird one. Oh, you know what? It might be... Did I just make it as like an asset? No, I did this one. I don't think so. I know I have it. It was probably even a recent file in... Okay, I can just make one really quick. So basically, it's I wanted to make a gradient mask. So same kind of idea that we were doing before. We're going to go into gradients, and we're going to go like this, and we're going to change the gradient to a basic black and white. And I think we probably want to invert it, but we can do that in Gaia as well. But so the idea is here is we've got this kind of nice gradient going from the inside to the out. And if we go into, that's all we wanted. Go into the gradient itself, which I can never quite figure out. Yeah, I guess I can never find out how to get into this scene. We want to do is we want the white get back to my complaining about. You basically want this. You want almost, although it creates a weird ridge that I don't quite know. And I don't know if maybe we add another one over here, if that's going to make this better or not. It kind of still does it. But either way, you want kind of it all white here, and then you want to have a nice gradient towards the border. This is kind of getting a little better. No, I didn't want that. I didn't want this either. Man, I gotta tell you, I don't know. Honest to God, I don't know how people use Photoshop. Just trying to make this gradient here something that kind of has a harsh edge, but it fades nicely into black, but I can't quite figure out how to make that black edge even more. It's not that bad. Okay, let's just say it's something like this for now. And now we can actually adjust this gradient, I think. I want to adjust the gradient size. So that's changing that. That's all those individual bars. But wherever the size of this is, okay, it doesn't matter. Okay, let's just get this exported, and we'll do active assets, Gaia mask, and we're going to call this island mask. And then in Gaia, what I wanted to do is use this mask. So it looks kind of like this. You'll see in a second. I want to add a constant. So a constant is just like standard height. And you'll see in a second. And I want to merge whatever we did. So let's just say from this point here. Okay, I want to merge this with the constant. And I want this file to be the mask. Okay, so now I want the merge to be 100%. And I want to invert. I guess I can't just invert this file here. Maybe I can here. Okay. There we go. And then for the constant, we want to drop the height. And we want to pin this. Go back to the constant and drop the height even more. Okay. This is basically what I wanted to do. So the idea being that we're taking like just a flat part of the terrain, and we're basically we're hiding everything outside of this. And like this gradient is probably again not the best. You know, maybe we can get away with adding like if we could add our blur node. Yeah, see, that helps a lot actually. Cool. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So okay, so it's kind of funny. I can't quite let go of certain little things. Now it's going to go through this whole thing and reprocess, which is so dumb. I don't know why. Just why it's going to go through every node and reprocess because you're editing something in the back. I don't know. Yeah, that barely did anything. I mean, what I was kind of wanting to do is raise the terrain height, so I probably could figure that out. I wanted to raise the height of the terrain above this surface so that this height here of this constant was even lower than, like if I could do minus, I would, but you can't. I got to raise this terrain above everything else. But you can kind of see the idea. And the reason why I want to do this is because I want to make this an island in even in Unreal Engine. It it will look much better because there will be a defined edge. You can sort of say this is the edge of the map. You can put it in an ocean and put water around it, so that's like a quick way to keep a player or keep someone inside. When you're rendering it, it looks better because if you look at like something like this, there's no harsh edge. It's sort of like look at the harsh edge of where we have the gray. It's obvious. Whereas if you have in a circle, you end up with like something that doesn't look as it kind of fits the horizon and the landscape. So overall, putting everything into this sort of circle idea is great. And Fortnite, this is how it works. So now when you're looking at the train, you say, okay, this is cool, but it really is, this is too small a part of the train. And I think the sacrifice I'm going to have to make is potentially just eliminating a lot of this edge. And you can see from this terrain, you can see from this terrain that this is the good data and these blocks outside are the bad data. And if we go all the way over here, we don't really need as much of this as I think. We kind of just want the island to almost fade out from just beyond this edge. And unfortunately, we probably just need to, sacrifice, like, I'm just thinking how I would want this. I wish I could just draw on the screen. I would want the island to kind of be like it to fade past this. So it to be in here and it to come around like this and kind of be in this size. So what I'll do is I'm going to take a break on the stream. It's 4 o'clock. I'm not going to go that much further. I might take a little break here, probably 15 minutes to get coffee, and I'll come back and I'll wrap this up, and I'll even probably just experiment with some coloring of the terrain to kind of see how that looks. And then I'll probably watch that tutorial around how to fix this problem here with this with all of the displacement, and then I will also adjust this terrain in QGIS to bring it in. So just have to sit down and kind of bring it into a smaller level, and then I'll re-import it back into Gaia. I'll make some of these changes again. I'll experiment with some of the nodes, and at the end result, I think tomorrow's stream we should have it. I might bring it into Unreal Engine now just to kind of see how it looks. It's gonna not look great, I don't think, but it would be kind of fun to see how it looks in Unreal Engine. So yeah, why don't we just do that while we're on the stream? I'll go ahead and just do an export. So I'll just do a quick one. Export. It's called output. I'll get the actual terrain data just for now, so we have something. So if I go in here and I change this to raw. Actually, I've been having issues with this raw data exporting, but I think it's R16 use short. We'll go 8K. Why not? Just go for the full thing. Range, normalize, bake cache, and we'll go working Gaia output. Cool. Yeah, so I will I'll do this export while this is not running or while we're on a break, and then we'll take a peek at it in Unreal Engine and see how it actually looks. Okay, I'll be back. Thanks. All right, we're back. Okay, so we're only got about 25 minutes left. I'm going to end the stream at 5 p.m. Eastern, but I want to just do a couple quick things. Let's just for yeah, I don't even think I want to get into doing like the coloring in this right now because I think when we bring in the Unreal Engine, it's not going to matter right away until I can get some more work put in place with texturing. So I exported a file. I think I exported the file. Maybe I didn't hit export. Let's just double check. I may have just forgotten to hit the export. I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Working Gaia output. No, 913. Okay, I think it should be pretty quick. Let's just go ahead and export the file. And it's going to go through and it's going to export us a height map. I'll just taking a quick peek to see if any of these nodes look like they're going to take a while. But I think we're going to be okay. And while that's happening, I'm going to launch Unreal Engine. And we're just going to see, like for fun, what this sort of looks like. And it'll give us a canvas to come back to and say, okay, you know, this needs to be fixed, and then, you know, I'll have a better idea of what to tackle for the next stream. So this is 14%. I think it's going to be pretty. By the time I get this all launched and running, I think we should have the height map exported. So we'll end the stream with that, just kind of seeing how this looks in Unreal Engine. And then I definitely have a bunch of other things I want to do. Just a reminder, I'll crop down that landscape. We'll work on, you know, adding a bit of height, even if it's not, you know, even if it's not exact. I would like to get something that looks like a bit more elevation change on that scene. And then after all that's done, I think this is the one that we brought in last time. We did this, I think, on the last stream. We brought in the raw data. So this will be a chance to kind of see how that data looks with... so let's just let this load. Okay, the stream might get a little bit choppy here. Looks like the video lost. That could just be... I don't know if the audio is going to get choppy here, but the video is. I'm both trying to launch Unreal Engine and finish the Gaia export. Hopefully it's not too bad. Let me just, while we're here, I'll listen to the stream. I'm actually just kind of curious what happens to my audio when we get into this processing like this. I'm just going to mute for a second. Okay, so good news is it sounds like the audio stays pretty steady. So I can talk through this, and the video is going to jump around a bit, but that's all good. Let it do it. So what's happening right now is that I'm exporting a height map from Gaia. So just to kind of summarize what we were doing before. So we had some high res data, LiDAR data, really good quality terrain data from Cathedral Rock, this location. We had some low res data, which is from radar from space, and we were in a tool called QGIS, and we were like merging it all together. So we were, you know, combining it, so we had one kind of consistent terrain map. And then we were bringing it into Gaia, which was what was adding a bunch of those details. You can kind of see it on the screen. it's adding some erosion, and you can see like it's adding a bit of like a I don't know what the right word of this is. Not strata. Okay. Strata. So it's adding like strata here. So it's taking a terrain that was very flat, and almost there was no detail in it at all. It was just flat, and just looked like nothing, and adding like okay, here's like a little bit of erosion where the water would erode. Here's where you get these kind of stratas in the terrain. We're adding a bunch of detail, and we're not anywhere close to kind of having that done. But I'm confident now with what we have that with a little extra work, we can get a terrain that you won't really be able to tell that there's a high res and a low res. It will look, I think when we're done with it, it'll look really close. They'll look very close together. You won't obvious, I don't think at the beginning, that they're low res and high res data. And then once we do that, we're going to be able to import this into Unreal Engine. And now we went from like a 3D render, which we did in Blender, and make something that looks cool from one angle, to something that you can actually walk around in, change a camera angle, change the lighting, like something totally dynamic. And that's exciting because that opens up like massive possibilities with this work. We can do time lapsing, we can do camera movement, we can do cinematics, we can do all sorts of fun stuff. And Unreal Engine's getting so incredible with procedurally generated forests and foliage and grass. We can just infinite what we can do, and only really held back by the processing power of the modern computers, right? As Xboxes get better, PlayStations get better, PCs get better, we will eventually, I don't know how long it'll take, but let's say maximum 5 years, we're probably away from really, really good photorealism in Unreal Engine and in VR. So, the bigger long-term vision, and the reason why I'm putting all this effort in now, is because when we get to that place, I want to be at the forefront of it. I want to be able to make not just photorealistic terrains, because again, you can go take a photo, you can take a video, you can get something that looks good from one angle, but I want something where it's like you can walk through it and you feel like, okay, this is a really, really cool replica of a real world location. So that's the ultimate goal. And I want people to be able to travel virtually to these places that I have been to, that I really love, and experience them. Maybe they don't have mobility, maybe they have some type of disability, maybe financially they can't go, maybe they live in a part of the world where they don't have the right passport to be able to travel to these places, financial reasons. There's 100 reasons why you can't go to these places, or even just climate. Maybe these places won't exist in the same way, or they overcrowd, and you can't, like Moraine Lake in Canada, you can't even go to anymore without getting a ticket to a shuttle. So that's the vision. The intermediate step, which we're kind of working on now, is getting this stuff in Unreal Engine, running it, kind of getting it set up to look as photorealistic as possible. And then a shortcut for us to do some stuff with this is Fortnite. And I've talked about this before, but Fortnite is a game that people play. Did that just cover that, or is okay? Yeah, that erosion node's gonna take a while. Oh no, it's going faster. Okay. Fortnite is a game. It's cross-platform. It's available on Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo Switch, and it has a full-featured editor that you can run in Unreal Engine, and it's built on Unreal Engine. So I've done these experiments on previous streams where, like, we can legitimately get these real-world locations into Fortnite, and yeah, they won't look quite as photorealistic as they will, at scale, fully in Unreal Engine. In a game that we would package up and release, on Xbox or PlayStation or on computer. But I gotta say that it looks pretty good and it has all of the interactivity of Fortnite. You know, you can race, you can go on a race in the mode from end to end. You can have a battle royale death match. You can make an RPG a game. It's kind of like a canvas that is progresses the ability to make this interactive to a pretty high degree, and I can deploy that and test it on other people's machines on their their Xbox on Fortnite in a way that just isn't possible to do right now in typical Unreal Engine. So that's our path, and we're kind of working towards that. And this step of getting the terrain into Unreal Engine means we can close the book on the QGIS tools of the world, which are super boring and uninteresting to watch, and Gaia, which is a little more fun, but not, it's probably the most exciting thing for most people, and into like some really fun, cool development stuff that people I think will dig. So this is a bit of the grind before we get to the fun part. That's my speech. I'm watching these percentages go and just buying time. I see there are today a few people watching across YouTube and looks like YouTube and Twitch. So if you're on either of those and have a question, something you're curious about to do with 3D rendering or landscape photography, travel, Unreal Engine, Blender, Gaia, you name it, just hit it up in the chat, and I can certainly answer those questions while this is finalizing. Too late. You don't have enough time. You can still ask me a question. Okay. Good news is it looks like this is done. Bad news is like my whole computer is kind of freaking out a bit. Okay. So let's save. We'll kind of go through this in order because we're getting a bit of. Okay, so we have our output. Okay. So let's that we don't want. So first thing we're going to save is our file. And then we're going to close Gaia to free up some resources for Unreal Engine. Everything's kind of ground to a bit of a halt here, so just bear with me. Okay, let's close this. We probably ran out of system memory. Hopefully this stream is still okay. I mean, I have Photoshop. I have Photoshop and Lightroom. I just realized like how many programs I have open, which is usually not something I do, but slowly we'll close this stuff off, and hopefully this will come back to life. I'm still struggling to close stuff down. This whole computer is kind of ground to a halt. I don't know if I don't want to have to close the stream, right? And we're almost at 5, so I'm just going to power through this. It's just a little frustrating. If it doesn't work and I have to stop the stream, and we'll try this again tomorrow. But right now, everything is totally just kind of freezing up on me. Feel like it's slowly coming back, but I can't be sure. Still pretty choppy. Okay. Yeah, so I got like, I'm just going to close Unreal Engine as well. I think it ran out of probably GPU. Close this up. Okay. I think I got it back. And we'll just try to launch Unreal Engine now with a clean slate and see if that that helps us. I had the GPU was just taxed on probably on the Gaia thing. Okay, so let's open this up. Should be a little quicker this time. Yeah. And while we're here, I'm going to bring in a pack from Brushify. I've actually been working on my own. Landscape material, which we'll probably do in maybe a future stream. But in the meantime, I'm just going to see if I can pull in this Canyons pack, because it's going to make kind of texturing this thing really quick, so we can get something that looks pretty good. I just don't know if it's going to require download. I feel like I've cached it already, but if I haven't, then we won't get it for this launch. But let's see what happens anyway. We can get in here and do something. Okay, so let's get Unreal Engine open. And we're going to just do a new level. Actually, I think we actually might have a level saved. Excuse me. I'm a little worried this is pretty slow. And I'm worried that I'm going to need a restart. Like everything is just... Yeah, I think we might be... in trouble here. Yeah. I don't have a lot of optimism that this is going to work, because it's just the whole computer seems to be really slow. I might need to just give it a restart. Yeah. I mean, it's running, but I don't think I have any functionality. I'm just seeing if anything here is Epic Games, whatever that's running. Yeah, she's toast. Okay, so I'm going to just, before this totally crashes on us and I lose the recording, I'm going to stop the stream. It's almost 5 o'clock. Appreciate sticking through this one. I feel like we're getting close. It's a grind right now, but I think a few more fixes, and I think we're going to be in a good place. So thanks for joining, and I'm going to call it a stream.